high points of the day, more than 1,000 points. As Stuart has been saying, a lot of this built on inflation news. It's still worrisome, but not nearly as worrisome as people had thought. Again, that CPI reading, the Consumer Price Index, coming up at about a 7.5% annual rate. That is less than what we thought, but further down substantially from the roughly 8.2% annual clip we were seeing the month before. And now there's a sort of a growing wisdom among some that maybe interest rate hikes won't be as many or as severe. Way too soon to sort of jump to that conclusion. Fact of the matter is, though, those who place bets on where the Fed funds rate, the overnight bank lending rate that the Fed controls, will be come in December when the Fed meets again. Now they're looking overwhelmingly for about a half-point hike. Remember, we've had 4 3/4-point hikes back to back to back to back, and maybe all of that stops. But look at a 10-year note right now that is yielding about 3.85%. So, Scott Martin, what do you think of this, and whether the market is getting ahead of its skis or about right?
Well, in typical market fashion, Neil, the market gets ahead of its skis, either good or bad, and that's really the fun and not so fun part of investing, and that's the challenge that I think all of us have as investors and as we have as investment advisors at Kingsview. But if you look at the data, Neil, and just look at the trend and look at where we are today versus where we were 3 months ago and 6 months ago, vis-a-vis the CPI report today, vis-a-vis the producer prices report, which is soon to come out as well in the future, vis-a-vis, say, spending reports that we're seeing coming into the end of the year, business confidence reports, all these things that are coming to roost here that are showing that inflation is likely to calm down, consumers are likely to rebound, and the market itself is likely to preempt that recovery vis-a-vis what we're seeing today, which is 1,000 points in the Dow, my friend.
So looking at that and the backdrop for this, I mean, we're still expecting, I don't know where you are on this, a half-point hike in rates next month, but we're getting more language out of some key the Federal Reserve district presidents and others who will be voting members next year, saying, you know, this might be a good time to sort of tap the brakes. I'm kind of overgeneralizing here, but what do you make of that?
Yes, and where I am is Austin, Texas. If you can see behind me, it's very beautiful and very exciting here, too, because, Neil, talking to a lot of folks around town and talking about some of the job owning, let's say, from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, as well as some of the governors that you talked about just then, I believe that the Fed has to talk tough right now because they talked so easy for so many years, and they got railed for it. I mean, everybody lost their confidence in the Federal Reserve when they kept interest rates too low for too long. So now they have to put on that hawkish tone. But as you've noted over the course of many, many weeks now, the Fed has to pay attention to data, and not only data that's concurrent, data like we've seen today, but they have to start looking forward and seeing what the impacts are on some of those historic interest rate rises that we've seen so far this year to realize that, yes, they do have to tap the brakes, and therefore, too, if there happens to be a major recession, a major deflationary cycle that's upon us, I think interest rate cuts could be coming sometime later this year, and not later this year, later next year, when they see that, say, data come through that actually really hurts the economy because they have over-tightened so far this year.
All right, Scott, hang in there. I do want to talk to you a little later in the show, get your thoughts. Elon Musk, as you might have heard, my friend, is going to do away with remote work. He's probably the more prominent, tech giant to indicate those days are coming to an end. But I will want to pick your brain a little later as we gather data on this and who else is joining him on that. Thank you, Scott. In the meantime, here, as you can see, the Dow is about 9. Scott, we were talking a little earlier about the market comeback and all that. Tesla's among those issues storming back today. Most of the technology stocks are better than 10% back on the day itself. I don't know how long that lasts, but regarding these technology companies, they have been famous for this remote work that Jerry was getting into. I believe Twitter led the way as a percentage of the workforce that does their work away. More coming back. But the message from Elon Musk is, I want all of you back. It's one thing for financial giants to say that, but when you hear from the people who started all of this, kept at this, that could be a very different development. What do you think?
Agreed. And I think it's a development, Neil, that a lot of the country, at least the workers, the young workers, if you will, who aren't me, by the way, surprisingly, they're not ready for it. And you're right. Twitter led the way on that. Facebook, Google also did similar things. And speaking of Tesla, too, Neil, Elon Musk months ago said to a lot of Tesla workers, look, if you're going to work from home, you don't have a job. And what a weird concept to actually get a job, have an employer that treats you greatly, benefits, pay, a nice work environment, yet you stay home and you don't go to work and you actually have to keep the job and you actually go into the office. I mean, back in the day when I got out of college, many, many decades ago, my friend,
oh, please.
You had to go to work 5 days a week if you were lucky, and maybe 6. And maybe it was 12 days, 12 hours a day, too, at some points, because the work needed to get done. So lost in the translation here, I think, with this work-from-home concept is the camaraderie, the collaboration that you have with other coworkers that really develops a business, especially times like these where we're under some economic strife.
I don't know. This camaraderie thing is way overrated, but I understand what you're saying. But when I was your age, young man, much, much younger, I walked to school 6 miles uphill both ways. So don't get me started.
In a snowstorm.
In a snowstorm.
In June.
And it was June. Thank you. But you know what's interesting about the whole, get back to work thing and all that is, we still know there are, 10.5+ million jobs that go begging. And here you have a CEO of a company that is flying in the face of that, saying, I don't care what the dynamics are, and the pendulum still favors workers. This is my policy. I just wonder how many workers take him up on that, especially coming at a time when he's just axed half of them.
Yes, and it depends how desperate that worker gets, Neil. And I think with the inflationary environment, as we've talked about, as that gets a little more difficult,
a lot of them
let's
will
say,
get competing bids, right? Like I have a standing offer from IHOP. I can walk anytime, anytime. So
me as well.
Yeah.
Waffle House for myself, and it's like, which are great competitors. That'll be great tete-a-tete that we can have when we go to that show.
Well, you know what I'm saying? With Joe Gaza, I think that he is saying he doesn't care about that. I don't know whether that's a case of calling their bluff, and other CEOs may be going the same direction. But where do you see this headed?
Bingo. I think it's a bit of calling the bluff, a little bit of bloviating and saying, hey, you're going to have to take this offer or else. And the answer is probably in the middle somewhere. But I will tell you, this whole remote work thing that really blew up over COVID has to unwind a bit, because I'll just tell you, from our business being in financial services, we need people in the office. There is a loss that the business has in having people spread out, having people at home, having people on the phone all the time, on Zooms and so forth. So I think getting some of those workers, some of that workforce that really need to be in the office back in the office will help a lot of businesses recover, maybe even faster than the economy will.
We'll see. Always good seeing you, my friend Scott Martin. On that, we will go mano a mano each other to 2 fast food places. We'll see how that works out. In the meantime, Florida.